I'd like to introduce my name and speak to a discussion Q&A session. Okay. My name is Naomi Simply. On Twitter, I'm at Naomi Simply, at Enterprise Lab UK, and at White Enterprise Live. So I've got 3 personas on Twitter. My foray into social media came about in about 2008. I launched a business in 2007, had no budget for advertising, and I used grassroots marketing, word of mouth, and social media PR, which was fantastic. Fell in love with Twitter in 2008, and it's been a bit of a love affair, really. It's been great for me personally, and great for my business. So with Baby Love Disco, I used it to promote events. Like I said, we had never had any advertising budget, so we used to promote the events on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on Twitter. We used to, liven it up a bit by pictures and audio, shared information. And I am completely self-taught, so we're going to have a question and answer session, but one of the key things for me was being strategic about who I was following. So if we talk about the first business, which is an events company aimed at families, I followed other kids-related businesses, followed the competition, because it's always good to keep an eye on the competition, see what they're doing, who they're following, check their followers, check who they're talking to. I'm not a stalker or anything, by the way. And then also follow related media. That's really important because, like I said, I've used PR, and there's lots of PR opportunities on Twitter. Follow people that you know, because if you're not used to Twitter, and I'm talking about Twitter in particular because that's my thing is Twitter rather than Facebook and LinkedIn, even though I do use them. Talk to people that you know first. If you're not used to it can be quite daunting. So you make sure you have an avatar picture. Paolo, for example, I didn't realise he was 6'5", because I'm used to seeing this little picture in a square. But make sure you have a picture of yourself, or if you don't want to have a picture of yourself, have a company logo. Make sure you have a compelling bio, and for God's sake, don't forget, if you've got a website, put a website. If you haven't got a website, make sure you put a LinkedIn profile on there, or even a Facebook page. Another thing, so you've got the related media, you've got the people that you know, you've got the competition, you've got the other family-related businesses, the bloggers. Every industry has its bloggers. So for me, for Baby Love Disco, it was the mummy bloggers, which was fantastic. We used to get them to come to our events, we used to get them to review our events. So they just talk about, again, you think about, my analogy of it is a little spider's web. So it's getting your message out there to everybody. Another thing is, don't think too much about, if you're following the right people, I know when I do training sessions with people, they're like, oh, what am I going to tweet about? If you're following the right people, you join in conversations. It's like networking anyway, but it's online. Moving on to the other businesses that I have, I recently set up last year a youth enterprise employability company with 2 gentlemen who I met on Twitter. So you can build relationships up with people. Steve and I have been tweeting for bloody ages, and this is the first time that I've met him, which is fantastic. Well, it is. Look at him, he's gorgeous, isn't he? But it's fantastic. It's almost like you build up a community, you build up your community, you spread the word about about what you do. Now, I know that, I'm guessing that most of you on Twitter? Yeah. Can you put your hand up if you are? Is anybody an egg? Anybody an egg? If you are on Twitter, is anybody an egg? If you are, leave the room. If you are, if anybody follows me, somebody followed me today actually, bless him. It's a guy who was on the training course that I did a couple of weeks ago at Salford University. And he was a blue egg. He had no description of who he was. He had a very unusual surname, and I couldn't remember him because I meet a lot of people. And because he didn't have that picture, and he didn't have the description of who he was, I didn't recognise him. So make sure that you've got a really compelling profile. And if you're not happy with it, change it in a couple of weeks. If you're not happy with your avatar, change it. It's all about building relationships up with people. Does whoever in the room, we're at a networking event today, who goes networking? Okay, what sort of things do you do? Breakfast networking, evening things? Throw me a bone.
Not breakfast.
Not breakfast. No, I don't do breakfast.
You're really definite about
midnight. Midnight networking.
Midnight networking?
That's good, that. Good.
That is networking, dude.
That's good.
Midnight, is that you sure that's not the local swinging club?
Not telling you then.
So anyway, it's all about building relationships up with people. So if we talk about Enterprise Lab, for example, the new business is dealing with young people. We work with schools, universities, colleges, companies that are recruiting, and we were really strategic about who we were going to follow. And we've naturally, and it's just come from nowhere, made collaborations with people that we never thought we would be able to reach. And I'm not just talking about companies, I'm talking about ministers, I'm talking about Parliament. You know, my colleague Patan he's now able to hold events at Parliament. So we're having our first event at Parliament on the 21st of May, a debate on youth unemployment. That was through a connection on Twitter. I'll give you another example. Talking about, do any of you know what I know what hashtag is? But is there anyone here that doesn't know what hashtag is? Most of you know the sort of general feel with Twitter. If you don't, there's an amazing guide to Twitter that Smarter do. At Smarter HQ, it's the best guide to Twitter. It's all in layman's terms. It tells you to observe, listen to what people have got to say, and to join in conversations. It's the best guide that I've come across. Now, with PR, you can search on a regular daily basis journalist requests, media requests. You put in hashtag in the search bit, hashtag journo request. I was in Prima magazine, last month, because I responded to a media request. They were looking for someone who wanted makeover. I actually put my sister forward, but they obviously thought that I needed a makeover. The fringe is growing out. But I got to mention my business. So I didn't just go on there and get started up. I actually got to mention my business. I used every opportunity that I have to tell people about my business, and social media is a great way of doing that. Today I got a tweet from a guy, Andy Starr, somebody, sent me a message saying, we are looking for Manchester entrepreneurs for CBBC. Can you DM me your email address? Tuesday, after a quick email thing, I'm now going to be a entrepreneur on tour with Sarah Khan in Manchester on Tuesday with 3 primary schools, literally just like that from Twitter. So you've got to be smart in the way that you use it, and I can't stress that enough. But I'm not going to talk anymore, because I want you to all ask us questions in a minute, and I'm going to pass you on to Steve, who knows about the legal side of everything.
I can't follow that. Right, okay. The legal side of things, and it'd be really easy to sort of sit here and say, actually, you should be terrified. There's loads of risks to it. And there are risks to how you do Twitter, but there's a risk of getting out of bed in the morning. And there's an awful lot in the papers recently about, say, anybody seen anything about Ched Evans, the footballer who's involved in the rape allegation, or he's actually convicted of rape? Yeah. There's people now tweeting things and actually going to jail over what they tweet. So, as much as you're all sort of sat in this room thinking it's a great idea, there's a lawyer in the room who's probably going to get arrested, or it's going to be a scare story. It's not, for 1 second. And part of the reason for that is, Naomi's done this, and she's a living example of the kind of thing you can do through Twitter, and I've been lucky enough to actually meet a lot of people like her who actually used it to build and launch business, and build and launch different parts of life. I like to say that my life's a bit sort of equal time in social media, because I met my wife on Match.com. You know, anytime you have a discussion about this, it's the best lead-in, and and to be fair, I wasn't ever going to meet anybody else and quite lower the standards, so match that can work. But the point of this is, I used to be a private practice lawyer. In place, I used to be an alcoholic. I'm over it now. And I'm now the head of legal at boohoo.com. Anybody shop there? If not, why not?
You need to amazing.
Yes, great. Fabulous. No, it is. It's like it's a trend-based fashion website. The idea is that we're completely online, so we don't have to charge huge amounts of money for having overheads and rates and that kind of thing. And it's anyway, if you stick Boohoo into Google, you'll find us fairly quickly. I got that job purely through social media. I can say that to you quite easily. It's pretty much the dream job because when I was in private practice, I used to advise in social media. So now I've gone to work for a company that's really big at it, that's actually growing internationally. We've gone to Australia fairly recently, we've gone to New Zealand fairly recently. And I started out in a very, very similar way with it to the way Naomi did. I worked at a law firm that, had money but wouldn't spend it on PR for my particular area of law, so got on Twitter. By the time I ended up leaving private practice, I was getting maybe 10 or 20% of my work through Twitter. And that's actually quite tough in a profession that hates Twitter. Lawyers hate Twitter with a passion.
Yeah.
Well, lawyers they hate Twitter with a passion because it does carry risk. So does any other kind of marketing. Advertising does, word of mouth does, TV certainly does, radio certainly does, anything else like that. And as I say, it's the same kind of risk that you have to cope with in the offline world as in the online world, which people don't seem to realise that very successfully. And it did an awful lot for me. I am allegedly, and I say allegedly because the person who told me this was drunk when he told me, the most followed lawyer in Manchester on Twitter. Now, it's not a crown that's particularly well contested because lawyers, like I say, hate Twitter. But I made some really, really fantastic links through Twitter and through LinkedIn actually as well. Anybody on LinkedIn? That's pretty encouraging. Hands up to everybody who's actually on LinkedIn. You're definitely on. The same kind of thing that we talked about Twitter actually tends to go for LinkedIn as well in terms of how a decent profile and telling people what you should be saying.
You can actually link them in together. You can Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter, you can link them all together.
Yeah, it's very dead easy. But without Twitter, I got to write a book that some people bought about social media and law. There's not many people who actually say they practice social media or a distinct thing because you start out doing media, you start out doing IP, then you sort of end up doing social media. Now I've ended up in a job where I have to do pretty much every kind of law because there's just me and the reason I'm late here tonight is because we've got a lot of things on at the moment. But it's done a lot for me professionally. That's a lot for me as a scumbag lawyer in the room where you'll have a handshake with me, catch your fingers afterwards, or I'll ask you to leave your mortgage deed in my briefcase or something like that. That's the reputation we get because we're not very good at engaging with people as a profession, and it's absolutely true. Some people are now starting to get Twitter a little bit more into the profession and realise that you can build some decent links with people. But like anything else, it's trial and error, and it takes a little bit of time. But it takes a little bit of time versus what would normally be if you didn't have Twitter, if you didn't have LinkedIn, if you didn't have Facebook, a huge investment in any other kind of marketing. You can do this now. It's a level playing field. There's a very big cliche that goes about Twitter, about LinkedIn, about any kind of social media, that is the conversation that's happening without you. We as a business cannot afford to be at least listening to that conversation. And we participate in it as well, and that's how we remain successful. And even if you don't think you know what to say, if you're on Twitter, and even if you're retweeting what other people say, you're serving as an information resource to the people that follow you, and that's a little bit of responsibility, but you don't have to come up with original stuff every time. The big mistake lawyers make with Twitter is assuming that, you have to have, they just broadcast. They put links to press releases they've done, which they've thought about for a particular long period of time, which will be fact checked and libel checked and whatever else the kind of check that needs to be. It's fairly easy and you can get a bit carried away with it, but if the general rule of thumb is don't say anything that you wouldn't normally expect to be either smacked in the face or sent to prison for, you will be fine on social media. You absolutely will. There is a lot of stuff out there. The Smarter Guide, which Stephen said, is absolutely brilliant. There's a lot of stuff on e-consultancy, if anything falls there. There is information out there, and that's kind of emblematic of social media. You can use it to get pretty much any information you're after, just depending upon the amount of time that you will spend with it. So no matter what anybody tells you about risks, and yes, there are risks, certainly advertising more now on websites and apply to what you say on Twitter in certain circumstances. Know them, understand them, but for God's sake, don't let it put you off using social media because you can you know, it's a living example of what you can do with this. And she's right. I've had plenty of similar experiences where I've ended up on Radio 5 or BBC Breakfast, things like that, because of somebody asking me a question on Twitter. You will have something to say that somebody will want to hear, no matter what you do. And trust me, there are plenty of idiots out there showing videos of cats playing pianos on YouTube that really do have nothing to say. If you sat here and you're in this environment because you have something to say to someone, it's your video. But you know, you're here because you want to be networking with people. Twitter's the best warm-up app. And that Alan Johns actually, who's really good at Twitter, who's a friend of mine who told me that. It's the best warm-up app you'll ever have with someone, and LinkedIn, because you know a bit about the person you're talking about, you'll know, you know about your common interests, and you'll have a starting point, as opposed to this kind of thing, which can be a bit terrifying when you walk into a room and sort of do the university conversation. Hi, who are you? What do you do? And you hand this kind of that sort of thing. It's just an easy way of doing it, and there's no excuse not to be doing it now. You can send tweets from your mobile, from your iPad, as that lady's doing, any of the different mobile devices. Twitter now on its own has 10 million users in the UK. Bear in mind that people will say to you, well, you know, lawyers will say to you very often, and from within the profession, I used to say to various firms I work for, Twitter's a good idea. We won't get clients with it. With the greatest respect and looking straight to camera, that's bullshit. Absolute bullshit. Because there are plenty of people out there. There are business leaders on LinkedIn and Twitter. One next to me. There are journalists on LinkedIn and Twitter. There are clients out there for you to find and for you to pick up. Just like Velcro rolling across the flipping off it. There's no reason why you can't do it. And what you have to say is just as relevant as what anybody else has to say who's got a really big marketing budget, who has an advertising campaign. If you have good content, then people will want to read it. But that's pretty much it.
It's almost like, talking about content, you know, you have to almost become, depending on what you do, you become a guru of what you do. So you, like we were talking about sharing information, if you're following, you know, industry-related media, it almost gives you credibility. So you become a guru of what you do via social media. So you know what's going on. You know what events are going on. You know what the latest news stories is. You know if you're talking about say I work with a furniture company. You know, they know all the latest interiors news, if they've got new products. And it's not, you can't just go on there. The biggest thing I would advise, you can't just go on there and sell.
Yeah.
It's a very softly approach. If that's what you want to do, it's not going to work. It's about building relationships up with people.
That's absolutely. It's sort of cliche that's come out of that. It's actually, what you're looking at is return on engagement rather than return on investment, because all of this is about having a conversation. If all you do is broadcast, say, look at my website, look at my website, look at my website, that is seriously going to piss people off very, very quickly, because you don't care about them. It's the same thing as if you went to an event like this, and somebody sold to you continuously, and I'm hoping there's nobody in this room that will do that. And only talks about them. It's about what you get to learn out with the people, and that's where the real value.
And with the joining and conversation, taking opportunities. I'll give you another example. Last week, I noticed there was a lady who was following me. She just comes to Cisco. She's a massive company, and I started following her. So I'm really, another thing was, we're talking about this spiderweb analogy. You sort of investigate people to follow. So if you're doing something in particular industry, you follow all the right people, and you'll find new people to follow all the time. And I followed this girl. She followed me back. She saw what I did, and she said, "Look, can I get your email address?" Sent me an email. We're doing a question session with the CEO of Cisco UK. Could you throw some questions about youth young people? Like, yeah. And I got to talk with this guy. And it was not just me. I was talking. He was talking to me. He was also talking to me via Cisco, via his personal account, and then she was joining the conversation. So that's a four-way conversation.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, the best geek story. I think you might give away with a bit of a film geek. I don't get out that much. Not so much tax percentage, but stack percentage. And a guy I met through Twitter was one of the top lawyers at Warner Bros. In the States. He knows that I'm a particular fan of Batman superhero films. He knew that I'm a Superman film. And I did him a favour. He went out of his way to get me a crew t-shirt from the Superman film that's filming now. And nobody will ever own or get. And it didn't cost me very much. It was something that means something to me. He spent time to send that from the set in Vancouver over, and it sat in said, have a conversation with my practice say, it's that kind of conversation you never normally get to have. Because where you find yourself in the same room with these people.
It gives you opportunity to talk to people that you never really would have had an opportunity to talk to.
Exactly. We know each other a lot when we're after the net, but Naomi's been great at building her own profile, phenomenally successful with this stuff. She's entirely right now. It's the lowest of low hanging fruit. You can get these software like TweetDeck, like eTweet, that kind of thing, that can be with a column for what you're interested in. And you can get tweets filtered to you, suited to your interest in business, delivered to you. You don't even have to go and look for it to start with. You can set a Google alert for what's interesting to you in your business and what you do in your social activity. This stuff is out there for you to find. That's what the internet does. It connects you to pretty much everything. If you willing to spend a bit of time with it, you will get a hell of a lot out of it.
It's also as well about building audiences. I know of a writer who has a publisher who's not publishing books yet. So he's built an audience. He's built an audience on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. He's very controversial. So he's got a ready-made audience for that book. So you can go back to the publisher and say, I've got this audience and these people are interested in this. Another example, and this is like, I talked to, and they make me laugh so much, two people on Twitter who are not even real people. One of them is a scriptwriter for Coronation Street called @BatBrenda. She's actually written a play which has an actor from, a comedian from Coronation Street called Steve Houston. She's doing a tour around the north of England. I'm going to go and see her at Sale Waterside next Thursday. But her persona on Twitter is not as a scriptwriter from Coronation Street. Her persona is that she works at Supercar. She works in the taxi office. So that's how we speak. There's another lady on Twitter who is, I don't even know if she's a lady, she might be in real life, she might be a bloke. But on Twitter, she has the persona of a character who was in the royal family called Beverly Macker. And she's absolutely hilarious. So if I want a bit of a laugh, I'll tweet with her. Just right out loud. And when I'm talking about Twitter as well, I'm not on it 24/7, okay? I dip in and dip out. It's using the time that you've got effectively. And the biggest time consuming thing is the follows. You have to build up an audience. None of you are Lady Gaga. Don't be arrogant and go on Twitter and set up an amazing profile and think that you're going to get 1 million followers by doing nothing. You've got to follow people to get followers.
One of you might be Lady Gaga, I mean, I don't know, swearing to that. But it's like the script writers. One of my favourite film directors ever. Anybody seen The Exorcist or Mention Action? God, what was it before? The guy who directed that guy called Louis Friedman. He's never done a great deal to sort of go and glare and still hear him. He's on Twitter, and I was having a really deep conversation with him on Friday night. And you would never, ever, ever, ever get to meet this person apart from his freedom, never, ever, ever get this. Ever. And that's the point. The playing field is absolutely level for you to say something that's just as interesting as anybody else. Ever. And if you just sit there and say, I am fantastic, and I know you use the word, I hate the word good. I don't think there is one for social media.
There isn't. So for me, for example,
you are one though.
No, but on my profile, I don't even have my social media consultancy on there. I just say I like social media, because nobody is. I'm not professing to be an expert. I'm completely self-taught, and I know how you can use it.
Anybody who tells you they are expert in social media should run a mile.
Yeah.
Quickly, with really comfortable shoes, just get away from them.
And also, if you've got a business where you don't want to do this tweet thing, and you want somebody else in the business to do it, don't assume that it's going to be the youngest person in the office. It's going to be the person that is most passionate about the business. And it's about using the time that you've got effectively, so dipping in, dipping out, joining in conversations here. You can do lists, you can do that. My favourite thing is actually, I have to tweet, but actually I go on good old-fashioned normal Twitter, which I actually prefer. And I know the people that I want to see what they're talking about, and I actually like talking to new people.
We've well, too.
Yeah. But I've still got Hootsuite,
No,
but
no,
do you know
no.
what? I don't really like it. It's a bit messy.
No, you have to know how to use it. It's a bit temperamental. You know, but there's no substitute just sitting there and looking what people are saying, and that's the whole point you do in the first place. Not everybody is going to want to say something that's interesting to you, but the best way I make contact with it was by watching crap TV.
Yeah.
You know, you'd be watching
Question time's a good
Question
time.
Time, yeah.
Oh,
Question
yeah,
Time,
God,
Question Time, The Apprentice,
yeah.
Britain's Got Talent, or
Yeah.
X Factor.
Or did you watch that rinsing program last night?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
Well, I'm going to admit to it. It's like everyone you know, or most people you would want to know, will be watching the same terrible television as you. And it was a really, really good way to make contact with you. I managed to talk about how much I can't stand now and I hate everything it's tied to. And The Apprentice is another, you know, The Apprentice is a great thing to follow and try to keep you off because it endears people to you more than you might think it would do. But seriously, think about, you know, if you're at an event that you would want to, that you're interested, you want to talk about, if you're just chatting, that's the kind of thing that endears someone to you in real life anyway. If you're just chatting about something, have something to say, then people are going to want to follow you anyway. That's what that content is building your audience, building your conversation, because it's all about, you know, it's like if you're a writer, you write what you know. You know, that's what, a writer writes what they know. A tweeter tweets about what they know, and about what's important to them, and about what they're passionate about what they have something to say about. But as I say, you know, you've got 140 characters to say what you want to say on Twitter. Great focusing your attention.
Yeah.
You can't afford to waffle. And make the point, it's a really, really good one to get disciplined about making the point really
But
clear.
it's like, talking about making your point, I'm sure that you all probably know, CSC is something every Sunday called Small Business Sunday. So you tweet in between 5, 7:30, very briefly about your business, includes hashtag SBS. On a Monday, Michelle Moan does Men on a Monday, I think she does. Or just that Jacqueline Gold. Yeah, she used to, she probably does. Yeah. Jacqueline Gold does one on Wednesday for women. If you tweet her between 1 and 3:30 and include hashtag wow at the end of your tweet. But again, 140 characters, you haven't got much to play with. But briefly describe about what your business is.
Absolutely.
So, should we open to questions now?
I think that's fine.
Yeah. Let's just throw some questions. Go on. We don't mind.
Please, someone.
It's funny you should say that actually. I've got a friend who is in PR and she is like the grammar police. But because you've got 140 characters, that has to go out the window. Because you can't use commas where there's supposed to be commas. And I do.
Although if you use
yeah.
the phrase LOL, I will find you.
Yeah, I know.
I will hunt you down.
Or roll.
Fight or Robblecop.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. It's like texting, isn't it? You know, text someone.
Yeah.
Like great GRA. I really hate that. I know it despise people who do that on Twitter. But you have only got a certain amount of space to make a point.
And you need to utilize the characters.
I think that people never use it to engage.
Yeah.
Wrong spelling. If someone's spelling something wrong, I think, well, that's not. So
Why are you or and why are you?
I know it.
But then that's because you're maybe that's one of your expertise. But for me, I know my friend Emma's always telling me, oh, you spelled there wrong, you spelled your thing and whatever. And yeah, she hates it because that's her thing. She does PR, she's copywriting, all that sort of thing. That's not me. I want to get my point across. So for me, it goes out the window. But if you do what you've got to do. If you are not comfortable with that, you stick with what you're doing.
That just means that if somebody was spelling things wrong,
Yeah.
I think it's probably the rest of their business might be
Well, I personally. I think it depends on what business it is. You know, if you're talking about a solicitor's or an accountant or something like that, yeah, you probably will need to be sharp with your spelling and your grammar. But for something, like I do.
It depends what your brand is. If you're a business, then, like anything else, if you're going to tweet about something, you need to change stuff. If you're buying into a person tends to tweet when they've got the time.
Yeah.
what you're actually interested in the person behind that profile rather than just anything. This comes down to, should you only ever really tweet as a business? Do you then have people within the business that you are happy with delegating responsibility of tweeting to? You then say to them, well, if you're going to have a username, put the brand in your username. So when people look for you to find this as well, that's sort of where business ends and where personal begins. It's quite a hard thing to get to grips with on Twitter every now and again. But yeah, if you're a copywriting company, you send out a message where you lolcast it, then you might think twice about spending £1 million with it. It's all just common sense, but if people like they're going to be running around like God knows what and sending a tweet in a hurry, and sometimes Apple will subvert your account. You've got an iPhone, supposed to do it properly anyway, and you'll send something and think, Christ, you know what? Why?
Well, I will say, I've actually deleted tweets. You know, literally, if something like that's happened, sugar, that I can't send that out. So I've actually deleted it immediately and sent it again.
Yeah.
With the correct name. Don't start that.
To be honest, if you do it regularly, if you really are terrible.
The grabber, please.
If you really are that terrible, people will pull you up on it anyway.
Yeah.
It's the wisdom of the crowd. If you really are that bad, it's kind of like the dark side of it, really, that people will look at things, criticise you over it. If you really do just say something that isn't interesting, or spell it badly, or whatever else, or people will find it out.
Is that answer?
Yeah, and sorry, businesses.
Yeah. No, I think no. I think if you're doing it in a personal capacity, you can get away with it as a business. No. Because again, that reflects on the brand.
Absolutely.
Yeah. People do it.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
I might personally, but I wouldn't with a business because it wouldn't be appropriate.
Yeah.
So,
Depends what you're talking about. If you know somebody colloquially, and it's the kind of thing you say to them up, then it's perfectly forgivable. There are some words that you never use in polite conversation anyway. Yeah, so
if you're there on as a company, you can't. If you're on there as a person, so I've got company ones and I've got personal ones. Well, just me, I've not got a Susan or anything like that. But yeah, I think I don't think you can get away with it if you're a company. So that's appropriate.
I've got one. Something happened with that tweet. This guy I've been tweeting with for about a year.
Yeah.
I'm alright, like good band and stuff. And then he asked me to do some design work for him.
Yeah.
So I was doing him a quote and stuff. I started doing all this work, and then I found out he was a fraud because he was about what he designed. So my question is, in terms of Twitter etiquette, do I need to shame him or?
I would.
Okay.
yeah, I wouldn't.
I would.
If what you're saying is true, then it can't be defamatory. You can back it up, and that's fine. But there have been the last big case about Twitter libel was of a match fixing allegation between Chris Cairns, and it was a £90,000 damages claim. Now, if it's fraud, it's never going to come after you and sue you. But would you say this in public? You do have to be a little bit careful. Naming and shaming is kind of a popular thing around the creative community around match fixing. That hates recruitment consultants and will call recruitment consultants out by name. If there are any recruitment consultants in the room, I do apologise, I'm not talking to you. You haven't named it yet. No, but you do need to be, as long as you can back up what you say, as long as it's true, it can't be defamatory, as long as you can prove it can't be defamatory. But don't assume that if you name and shame someone and you're wrong, there won't be a comeback because there will. You've got to be right. Because even if you don't get any legal repercussions, somebody else that knows them will weigh in and defend them without them trying to. Maybe not this particular guy.
Yeah.
Maybe you can argue that you've actually got responsibility to tell people who follow you that this guy is. This guy is a fraud or whatever else. But call someone a fraud, that's saying that they are guilty of a criminal offence, and that's a very, very serious
I think you have to be careful in the way that you said it.
Yeah.
But I would.
Yeah.
Personally, I wouldn't go, oh yeah, this guy's a fraud.
So I just use a
But I
hashtag
would-
fraud or?
Yeah. Hashtag fraud, hashtag dodgy, hashtag.
said hashtag it.
Yeah. But no, I think you have to say it in a certain way. You can't, like Steve said, you can't go, oh, this guy is a complete fraud. You've got to be smart with your words.
The first ever Twitter libel case between two MPs to do with whether or not one of them was thrown out of the polling station, and it was a case that ran for God knows how long, ended up with £3,000 award in damages over allegations this MP had been thrown out. It was another MP who made the allegation, £50,000 worth of costs. Cairns case, 140 characters, what's £90,000? What's that per word? So by all means, name and shame, it is still kind of it's a young medium. That's why there's no systems expert, and the etiquette of it is still developing, and people will call you out quite happily. So you've got to defend yourself, but just be very, very careful and make sure you can back it up.
It's like using it for customer service. If someone tweets you and complains about something, you've got to react to it straight away.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. There's, Phil Jones.
Yeah.
Phil Jones who's now the MD of the Northwest Brother, who was the marketing MD, sat on Twitter for about 3 months before he tweeted anything, and started out by finding people who had a problem with Brother products and pointing to the right place in the business and saying this is how you deal with it. I had it with Sky. I remember having a rant about the fact that my Sky wasn't working, and then someone from Sky got into it saying, hi, how can we deal with this? Sometimes you have to take stuff like that offline, because having a slanging match in public is never going to do you any good. But if you can take something offline and resolve it properly, you can really turn it to your advantage. And I suppose the apocryphal story is a guy named Jeff Jarvis, who was a journalist, worked for Wall Street Journal, bought a Dell computer, hated everything about it, hated the after-sales service, and had a blog called Dell Hell. And every time he typed in Dell, or Dell sucks, or anything to do with Dell, his blog was the first thing that came up. He had a massive following, and he called out Michael Dell, who owned the company, to say, my computer's crap, what are you going to do about it? Your after-sales service is crap, what are you going to do about it? And they ignored him for ages. He called out the CFO of the company, and a number of other different people. Eventually they bought him in, and they started to engage with bloggers around the world, started to get ideas of what people actually wanted out of Dell, rather than what they thought they wanted. That led to a website called ideastorm.com, where now you have different people who buy Dell machines will tell Dell what they want in the future. Jeff Jarvis wrote a piece in Business Week saying that they've actually got their heads around this now, and it was the best PR exercise for them because they've shown how they've really grown with it, how they do things properly, and they reckon they've made about $3 million just through tweets since that happened a few years ago. So you can rehabilitate yourself very publicly, and it can work spectacularly well.
Yeah, effectively, so I don't want to reflect that on me and like my friend or whatever.
Well, and that's the other side of the coin, isn't it? Yeah. But you're right. You do have a bit of a responsibility to people that follow you as well.
Yeah. That as well.
Yeah, but you'll get a message like someone is saying really bad things about you.
Oh God, don't open them.
And then you click on it, and then you're on a Viagra mailing list.
Or even if you.
Maybe that's just me.
Well, even if I get tweets, I've had quite a few recently. Tweets from people with just links, nothing else, just links, not the DM. I won't even open it. I won't respond to it.
See, that's probably linked in Facebook, which is that happens sometimes. And I disconnected that connection.
Well, with me, I have my Facebook. If I put something on Facebook, it goes on to Twitter. Because I use Twitter more than I use Facebook. I don't have it going from Twitter to Facebook. That doesn't work.
That's right. Because people will get angry
at
your constant Facebook updates.
So if you've got it round the other way, that usually works better. But if you had problems having it.
I've only got it going. Well, I had it going one way from Facebook to Twitter because I do much on Facebook.
Right. Yeah. That's the same with me.
And I'd look and there'd just be a link to SC.
Oh really? I know. I've never had that. Yeah. Well, yeah. If you don't know what a link's from, definitely don't know because it can be quite dangerous. And then everybody, especially those direct messages, everybody else who you follow then gets those direct messages. And actually, I would think, the people that actually open them must be quite paranoid because if someone's going to tweet saying, "Oh, someone's saying something really bad about you," well, whatever.
Really?
Any more questions?
How would you go about converting real world conversations?
Into what, sorry?
Real world
conversation.
I mean, if you're on LinkedIn and you link with somebody, because you intend
to have a conversation with them,
contact. You're saying that Twitter, you use it as a soft kind of, introduction.
But again, if you oh no, absolutely. The people that I'm following, especially with the enterprise lab thing, I've had 5 meetings in the last 2 weeks with people who I started tweeting with in the last couple of weeks. So it's that quick. But it's I think more so with people that you know that you're going to probably do business with, or that you've got, you know, common interest with on a business level.
Yeah, LinkedIn's easy because everybody knows that you have to do business with some third-party application. But it can be a bit tough on Twitter. But if you get along well and you have a decent conversation, it will happen anyway. I mean, if you're going to do that, then maybe Foursquare's worth thinking about. As much as it might say you're telling everybody where you are, even with an invitation to rob your house, and I wasn't at that for a while. If you tweet and then get used to it, you can't just do one thing and assume it's going to be the cure-all for everything you do. You can't just say, right, I'm going to do Twitter and that's it, and ignore Facebook and ignore LinkedIn. But the only way you really, like anything else, anybody who assumes that you don't need to spend money on additional marketing and that social media will solve it all for you is dead wrong. Because it's just part of the mix. Yeah, and even within your social media mix, you can't just do one thing because it'll only ever give you. Twitter is full of very sarcastic people, and you'll get a lot of spam through it, and it might end up lighting the experience of social media. Say you haven't been on LinkedIn, you don't get the more professional approach that you do. You haven't been on Facebook, you don't get the more company approach. There is always new platforms to be found, which is Twitter, the one that's going to shine through the corner. It's worth spreading your time out. If you get to know someone across, say, LinkedIn and Facebook on Twitter, there's ways you can say, that's nothing wrong with that. See the mind. Not a lot.
Then it's like, then you're talking about Foursquare, my sort of thing is about Foursquare, and I don't really want to tell people where I am unless it's something interesting.
Yeah.
So, you know, I went to New York for my 40th in August, got upgraded to a suite, transferred because I stalked them on Twitter, by the way.
You're never 40.
Oh yeah, I am. I'm 40. So, but because I was somewhere interesting, I Foursquared about it. Because I don't want to say, oh, Foursquare, I mean, how to do the shopping. That's a bit dull. I really don't think it's hot that you're in Asda. But if you're somewhere interesting,
it's pretty easy to get obsessed about Foursquare because then you start to make things work for you at more point in the check it like everywhere you go. Like I have checked it here because I had that competitive. Well, say you go to like Paris, you check the mail.
It's interesting.
You're something like that, then it tells people that you're more interested rather than I have gone down to Blockbuster to rent. Well, actually, that's not good.
Has that answered your question? I hope so. Any more questions? We'll have to go on the phone. Yeah. Well, if you're, yeah, it is. You can only follow a certain amount of people if you've only got a couple of people following. If you get more followers, you'll be able to follow more people. Yeah.
But it will tell you, you'll try and follow more people to smart they'll make it up.
No.
Maybe, every now and again, have a bit of confidence what happens with that. But they do need to get got to be quite careful.
Yeah.
If you're going to check something else on the job, you've got to make it very close to why. Yeah. You as a business are getting a load of personal information. More importantly, you use it to vet candidates. If you can turn it down just on the basis of a LinkedIn profile, that's illegal. That's discrimination. That's legal abuse, policy action. You're going to take people. Sends you into the company or something, that's one thing. At least if they know that you're going to do it to their candidates, but you've got to make very, very, very quick about it. You might routinely say, I'm only really interested if you like saying something, you might say, I'm only really interested if you've got a long LinkedIn, because you know that they use it actively, you know that it's something that is important to you, but otherwise, you do these things really, really, really fast.
Are you talking about actually recruiting people or looking at people's profiles to recruit? Yeah, well, absolutely. But again, you know, depending on which medium you're using, we're talking about Twitter, you know, you've got to make sure you use your hashtags, make sure it's quite targeted. But yeah, it can be great for recruitment, I think.
Oh, it can, but you wouldn't ever just make it just partner
No.
or hire based on
No.
LinkedIn profile or a Twitter profile. I hope.
But then that also goes back, one of the things I do with young people is your privacy settings on Facebook.
Yeah.
The amount of people that don't have the privacy settings, you look at the family pictures or they're drunk in Ibiza or something like that, you make sure that you have your privacy settings on so people can't look at anything,
Actually,
apart from the people that are friends with you.
that's a brilliant point, because people do look at you. You know, I was at an event a couple of weeks ago with the policy director of Facebook in the UK, and we were, that's pretty heavy name for that, I don't remember the name, but anyway, we're at a piece of research that ABG did about young people and Facebook and how they use it, called Digital Diaries. And they were saying that, you know, what people don't take into account is that you will be giving the kids a digital footprint before they know how to walk the rails. The sonogram will end up on there, kids can now use apps before they can tie shoelaces. My 6-month-old, and he's got more pics on Facebook than me, but he's cute, you know? But your parents...
So you did nothing used to that. Same my nappy out. Right, go on, sorry.
Yeah, but, you know, you wouldn't...
I'm sorry.
What were we talking about?
You're talking about your baby sits on your
Oh,
football
yeah.
footprint.
Yeah. So you've got a digital footprint, and then things that you post stupidly will remain to haunt you for a very long time. Because like any of these things, if you end up in any kind of legal trouble ever over Facebook, the one, or Twitter or whatever else, the one thing that's never ever going to lie in a witness box is a printout of your Twitter feed or your wall or whatever else.
At least if you delete it.
If you delete it, it's still recoverable. And what Simon from Facebook was saying to me is, people will jump up and down about privacy settings on Facebook all day long. It tends to be the 1% of people that are really, really bothered about it that will influence the 99% of the policy. And people assume that because you've gone on Facebook, you can just abdicate all responsibility for not watching your kids, not watching what you're doing. You know, the privacy settings are there for a reason. And you've got to realise that, you know, you broadcasted this potentially to the world, and it can come back and haunt you.
Especially with young people, I follow a friend of mine who's got a teenage daughter, and I follow her on Facebook. And she had some pictures on there which I thought were really inappropriate for her age. And I was like, toying with it, do I say something, do I don't? I said something. Because I thought that the images that she had on for a girl her age were totally inappropriate. And it frightened me, because I've known her since she was a baby. So I said something about it, and actually I even went in without logging in, and you can still look at these pictures. So you're opening up a big can of worms for paedophiles, for...
If you stick someone's name into Google search and look at Google Images, that'll go straight through to Facebook, and those pictures will end up there. You don't have to go onto Facebook to find it. That's Google.
Yeah.
And increasingly, as employers do, you know, not necessarily monitor you on Facebook and that kind of thing, but if they want to find out what kind of person you are, they will stick your name into search engine to see what comes back. So that's going to end up there, and that, like I say, there's a lot of people finding that now, and that you do need a bit more of a... I suppose, because social media's only been around since 2005 technically, the ethics is still going along with it, and the etiquette is still going along with it, and the wisdom of grounds plays a big part in figuring out what's acceptable, what isn't acceptable, and it needs people like them stepping in to say, or not just the other, but anybody stepping in to say, I don't think that's appropriate for people to understand exactly what is this, because you can't just hide behind a profile and assume that you're never ever going to face the kind of comeback. It doesn't work that way.
It can be dangerous.
It's very, very dangerous. That's why they've got Facebook for a long time stood up and didn't want a panic button for kids to be able to hit and say we've got a problem with the agreement or whatever else. Now they work with CEOP and a number of different child protection agencies to make sure that if there is a problem, there's one link they can go to and do it quickly.
It's just like you get these what they call trolls, cyberbullying and stuff like that. If somebody is inappropriate, remotely inappropriate, I think it's my worst thing, right? Worst situation for me, it's horrible. I've got my phone number on my social media website, and I had a message, a direct message that was going to all new followers just saying, come and say hello, make sure you come and tweet hello, which I still have. And I was cooking the kids' tea and got a phone call at about 5:30 from somebody, didn't recognise the number, but I answered it and said, oh, hello. I was like, who's that? Thinking, who the hell's this? And he said, oh, you told us to come and say hello. And I said, well, who are you? He said, I just started following him. I said, hang on a minute. I said, that is to come and tweet me hello, right? I said, I said, I don't know who you are. I said, I'm not quite comfortable with you ringing me up. I said, I'm sorry, but I've got to go. And then he sent me loads of apologetic, he started sending me text messages because he then had my phone number. And then I thought, do I take my phone number off my website? Do I change my message? I didn't, I chose not to, and I've never had an experience like that. But it can be quite dangerous. If anyone's horrible, block them.
Yeah.
Same on Facebook.
And that's the thing, in the terms of use for any platform that you use, if you've got a problem with someone, go to Facebook, go to Twitter and say, block them. And they might be persistent, might look for you elsewhere, but just block them. That's the best thing you can do.
You don't have to accept. You don't have to accept it at all.
You absolutely
nip it in the bud straight away.
There's more cases to do with Facebook bullying, with kids threatening each other over something that's happened at school or in a pub right now than anything else. And there's a lot of what tends to happen now is the criminal laws catching up with social media again because it's quite young. And you've got, say, the guy who, Liam, whatever he was called, who tweeted, the one was dead, it's great, Boston out, went to jail. You know, or when the riots were happening, one of the coolest things I've seen with social media was when the riots happened in Manchester, the night before when they were happening in London, it's weird because people might use something like the riots to almost build themselves a bit of social currency. You know, they'll mock at the picture of tanks at Covent Garden or whatever else. Or there was that thing going around saying, you know, elephants escaped from the zoo in London and are running riot through the crowds and all this kind of stuff. But there were people setting up the Manchester riots the night before, saying, we will meet at such and such an address. Here is a Facebook group for you to join so that you can come and riot with us. And then they wondered why the police came knocking on the door and people were actively outing them. Tweets and saying, this should be reported, this should be dealt with, this should be dealt with. And the government will turn around and say, surely in a riot we should turn off Twitter because people, or BBM or whatever else, because people use it to organise a riot. Again, without using the swear word, bullshit. And I will tweet that later. Bullshit. Because people, how they found the idiot with the big 8-kilogram sack of basmati rice that he looted from Tesco, and they did, or the picture of the girl sat outside Curry's wearing a Curry's uniform with the TV she nicked from the branch of Curry's, and the picture of her with a policeman. You know, how do you find these people? You go look for them. There was a case a couple of weeks ago with a woman who was on the tube racially abusing people that someone had taped and stuck on YouTube, and that's how they got prosecuted for racially aggravated harassment. So, you know, you will find these people. Increasingly you don't have to put up with this kind of abuse. The police are looking at it, other people will, as much as there is in the crowd, and it can be quite a dark thing sometimes, and you will, you know, get some people abuse just for the sake of it. You'd be surprised how people will go out of the way to help you, genuinely. So the most positive experience in my work life I've had with it.
And then also, you know, one thing we haven't mentioned is YouTube, which is another social media channel. So if you're, you know, I'm not going to say the word guru because you don't like it, but if you know, if whatever business you've got, if you can make a video, and it doesn't have to be a professional video, about, you know, which is again sort of going to add value and knowledge to people.
That's right.
Upload some videos.
They only as close to gurus you're going to get. The problem is that you will get them people who say, I'm a social media guru and charge you thousands of pounds to just tell you set a LinkedIn page up. And again, the wisdom of crowds will out these people. There are some people out there who really do know what they're talking about. People like the owners, people like, say, Sam, who's going to be here to see who really does get social media. And again, these people will be kind of separate, the weak will separate from the chaff in and of itself. But yeah, if you do have something to say, then people will. It's like Smart HQ Charlotte, who runs that, has loads of interesting things to say about how you use Twitter, how you don't use Twitter. So there will be someone out there who is an expert, or as near as damn as an expert in what you want to hear about.
Steve, can I go back to something you were discussing? Is what an employee puts onto social media allowable under employment legislation?
Depends entirely on what your employment contract says and what the social media policy is. What a lot of businesses don't have, a business will have an IT policy more often than not and say, this is when you can and can't use the internet, but won't have a social media policy. If it doesn't have that in, then it's quite tough. Then it becomes whether or not an issue of whether or not it's gross misconduct, say, And that will depend upon the circumstance of the case, and that will depend on what's in your employment contract.
Yes. But is what the employee puts on social media,
Can it be vicarious? Can the business be vicariously liable?
Yes.
In certain circumstances, absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
But it's usually very obvious when that happens. If they're tweeting, say, in the name of the business, or they've got the name of the brand in that business, absolutely.
Well, they have to make a point of saying, these opinions are my own.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to do it. If you're
Can't
going to
do
have...
that. Can't do that if they're employed.
Well, you can.
You can.
You can. You might easily say
Yeah.
these are my own, but it depends on the repercussions it has. If
Can
you're
do
talking
that
about...
with employees?
Yeah, if you're talking about, say, a criminal offence,
Well,
then...
we're talking about life.
Well, if you're talking about libel, then you have to ask whether or not they're allowed to say it on behalf of the company. But the easiest way around that is to have a social media policy that says, if you're going to do this, if you're going to be out there as an advocate for the business or whatever else, make it very, very clear to people in your profile, these are my own tweets, not the opinion everywhere else. If you look at any journalist, Rory Kessler-Jones, Torrin Douglas, anybody else like that that's really, really active, Laura Kusenberg, things like that,
All the big deals.
yeah, who all say, these are my opinions, not those of my employer.
Yeah.
What happens to you within the business as a result of what you say is governed by general employment law and your employment contracts, and whether or not you've actually said something that will amount to gross misconduct. The best example of that is the Bastard Stones case. If you think about it, you can pretty much figure out who Bastard Stones was about. It was a blogger who worked for Waterstones. He hated his job, absolutely hated his job. He had like a Dilbert kind of blog and said to people, I hate my job, I hate my boss. He never ever named Waterstones specifically. Because of that, they couldn't have him bringing the business into disrepute. And that's the issue. Are what they say is bringing the business into disrepute? And there's a big growing body of cases talking about when that will actually happen. What they reckon 1 in 6 businesses now has fired somebody for something they said on Facebook. So you do have to be very careful because you could end up in an unfair dismissal claim. You've got a guy, there's a case to do with a gas exploration company where one of their senior execs had on his LinkedIn profile, I am interested in career opportunities. According to their social media policy, they said that's inappropriate use of social media. You are bringing us into disrepute for fighting. He at the minute is suing them for constructive dismissal. It's not always going to work, and ACAS now has some really, really good guidelines on how you deal with this when it happens. Deal with things constructively, gradually, and proportionately more than anything else. But there's no reason why the same thing that you do offline, you get into trouble online. I mean, it will just depend on if you talk about libel. Again, are they saying it in the course of their employment? That's what it comes down to. That's the whole thing behind vicarious liability. Are you saying it while you're wearing, say, if it was us, are you saying it while you're wearing a Boohoo t-shirt? And that's usually the kind of rule of thumb.
Thank you.
From a formal life, if you pay a headhunter by a client with a certain caliber of candidate, you're paid to discriminate on behalf of the client.
Yeah.
And that's not a nice truth, but it is the truth. So a big headhunter will search every last orifice that they can find to see what they can find out about candidates before they submit them, even down to trying to personality type them based on the kind of stuff that they post on social media. And that way, there's nobody in any legal business who can do anything about third parties about that discrimination, not the client.
Although,
And that is the level at which a company is going to bother with social media. Below a sort of headhunter level, companies probably aren't going to bother doing too much checking up on social media.
granted, but what if you say something in the report you hand back to their client that's defamatory?
You don't.
No, you don't, but there are people out there who might do.
Because you wouldn't send them to them in the first place, would you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You stay on the phone.
Yeah.
But it's a good way to describe it when you pay to discriminate.
That's what.
Yeah, but you're not the employer who's making the decision to hire or fire based entirely on what's on their LinkedIn profile or their Facebook or whatever else. That's the difference. I mean, you're kind of a consultancy service. There's a question is whether or not, as a recruiter, whether or not you're using personal data, say, that might be a bit more interesting in terms of if you're talking about their religious preference or their sexual orientation, that kind of thing. That's sensitive personal data, and that you do need to be a little bit careful about. But if you say, he's a bit of an idiot because he said this out loud to people, then that's going to be totally different. But if he's going to say, he's Jewish, therefore don't employ him, then that's the kind of thing you will get in trouble for. Because not only is it libelous, potentially, it's also potentially breaches the Data Protection Act. Because if you're doing it in the name of the company as a headhunter, you are harvesting personal data. Just because it's not made clear that this is personal data, you as a company have rights under the Data Protection Act that you can't get away from. And you've got to make that very, very clear to people. You know, you might, as long as you don't tell them to make that decision based solely on what is online about the law, the personal data you hold, and they make the more complex issues, and that's fine. But you can't just assume that harvesting personal data and then using it in business is going to be okay. It isn't. Even down to the point where you've got a website now, on the 26th of May, you will need to get permission from everybody who uses your website, active consent, to say that you're happy, or they're happy with you having a cookie on their website to personalise the website for them. Privacy is a very, very, very big thing, and it's only going to get bigger. But you are right in basis what you say. I'd just be very careful about exactly how far you take that analysis.
Yeah.
Good man. But yeah, how far do you take that analysis, and what level of risk are you willing to assume of what you're telling your ultimate clients about the candidates that you're supplying to?
Shall we all have a mingle? Oh, sorry, yeah, come on.
I just want to say that schools people about
Yeah, there's quite a few organisations that go around to schools and talk about the pitfalls of it.
Facebook are doing a lot of work with schools to try and educate kids around the benefits and the drawbacks. So you'll know more than anybody, won't you?
Okay, well thank you very much for listening to us. If you've got any more questions and you want to sort of ask us individually, please feel free. But lovely to talk to you all. Thank you.